Hey y'all, hi. So today I am simply going to be lip swatching. Yes, that's right, lip swatching all shades of the new Merit Signature Matte Lipstick. Now, Merit has sponsored videos of mine in the past, but not this one. This is not a sponsored video. I'm just doing this because they sent me all of the colors, so I'm capable of doing it, and because it's been highly requested in my comments and my DMs, and because I'll enjoy it. I'm just doing it because I want to, and not because you told me to, and partly because you told me to. So if this does end up being a product that you decide to buy, and if this video gives you information that you need that helps you make that decision, I hope that you'll consider clicking through my link in the description box before you place the purchase at Merit, because I'll earn a commission from that purchase and it will complete the cycle of symbiosis between us, and it will help make it more likely that brands in the future will send me the entire range of colors of some things that I can make more videos like this, if that's something that you would enjoy. But hopefully this video will also give some of you the information that you need to decide that you don't need to make a purchase from Merit or make a purchase right now. I'm going to be as thorough as I can so that you can make the right decision. And if you ever place a purchase from Merit in the future, you can always come back and click through my link then. So I'm going to go through from lightest nude to richest red. I'm going to swatch every single one on my lips, and I'm going to compare them to each other and compare each one to anything that I have in the original Merit lipstick line that might be comparable. I don't own every single signature lip anymore because I only kept the ones that I wear a lot. I gave the other ones away. But back when I did have them all, back at the beginning, I filmed a detailed, comprehensive overhead swatch video showcasing and comparing all of them, and I'll link that down below. And I'll link it in the cards too. But today I'm going to do as many comparisons as I can. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about the formula. All the sections of the video will be timestamped so you can skip around. And now let us get right into the meat of the video. All right, Poston, gird your loins. All right, lips, gird your loins. My lips need to gird their loins. A little bit of information right before we start. I am very pale. Paler than you probably even know. I think it's hard to tell when it's just me and there's no one to compare me to here on the screen. I am a ghost. I've come back from the beyond, and I am simply transparent floating through the world. So just know that when it comes to the depth of these colors, they're all gonna look pretty much super dark on me. And I have a slight olive undertone in spite of being so pale, which will make the pinks pinker and the reds redder, essentially. We'll draw out the red undertones in any of these shades. I'll also insert some more neutral overhead swatch footage as we go through. Today, it's really all about the lip swatch. Okay, Antibes, a soft peach is what it's called on the Merit website, and we will see how soft it really is. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call this a soft color. I mean, on me, it looks positively vampy at full pigment. I guess that the peachiness of it is slightly soft. It is a bit of a grungy peach. That's what I would call it. And I do love that. I think this is an incredibly beautiful color. And I actually like it on myself a lot more than I thought I would, because peach tends to look very orange or very pink on me. This is a grubby enough peach to hold its own as a neutral, even against my olive complexion, and also to suit my personal aesthetic, which bright peaches don't really do. Let's see how it looks blotted. Interestingly, it looks like it will wear away to something a little bit softer, more natural and integrated with my lips, but maybe slightly brighter, slightly more peach in color. I kind of liked it better at full pigment than I do blotted, which is unusual. But overall, stunning. A dusky, murky peach. Okay, let's look at Maison, which Merit says is a berry mauve. It's interesting. Something about, I think, the formula or the way the pigment is suspended in the base is making these lipsticks layer quite darkly, quite quickly. So this one also looks pretty vampy on me, but berry colors do tend to lean that way on me. I think berry is the undertone that's drawn out in the least flattering way by my olive skin. I tend to really dislike berries on me. This, though, is also, like Antibes, murky enough to work for me if I wanted a berry, which I don't usually. It reminds me of some of the Lisa Eldridge velvet lipsticks that I got because they were the most neutral, the grungiest looking of Lisa's colors, but then ended up so vampy and so berry on me that I didn't keep them. I'm thinking particularly of Velvet Sorcery and Velvet Affair. So I appreciate the brown that is in this version of a berry mauve. Still not my favorite for me. Let's see how it looks blotted. Yeah, just like the other one, blotting really lightens up the color, but also brings out the the saturation kind of brings out the pink even more. For some people, this is absolutely going to be the best one, and for me, it's not. Here it is side by side with Antibes, both of them at full pigment. Antibes is definitely my preferred color of the two. And here it is side by side with what I think is the comp from the Satin signature lip, the original signature lip line, which is the shade L'Avenue. L'Avenue is also a bit vampy for me, but it has more brown in it than Maison. And because it's a little bit more sheer, because the formula of the Satin is a little bit more sheer, it also has a bit of my natural lip color coming through, even though it's so deep on me. So funnily enough, even though they're relatively close in color, and when you swatch them right next to each other, you can really see that they're kind of siblings to each other. L'Avenue for me is more flattering and much more wearable of a color. So this is L'Avenue at full pigment, and there it is blotted. I feel like blotted, it's really, really melting into my skin and really into my face. And it has retained kind of raisiny undertone even when blotted. All right, back to the mattes. This is Equestrian. Merit's calling it a warm brown. Wow, an incredibly rich, deep color. And it says it's a warm brown, but it's clearly been warmed up with red pigment instead of being warmed up with orange pigment. Usually, any lipstick that's called a warm brown looks straight up orange on me, and I can't stand it and I can't wear it. This is clearly extremely vampy on me, but it's warm in kind of a rosewood direction. And I think that that's quite beautiful. Let's see how it looks blotted. Wow, the depth is pretty much fully holding its own when I blot it or when I try to blot it, which is good. It's good that there's a lip, at least one, we'll see about the others in this line, that holds on to that depth. It would be a strong choice on any given day for me, but I think a very well conceived of and beautifully designed color, especially for this formula. Yeah, that one really, it has staying power. So here's a Equestrian next to 1990 from the Satin signature line, both at full pigment. I think this really highlights the difference between the formulas. They're very different browns. 1990, which is my favorite lipstick from the original line, is a more neutral brown, not as much of a red brown, but also not orange. It's absolutely perfect to me. It almost has a bit of gray or a bit of green in it that just makes it hit. So they're quite different browns. Equestrian looks positively rosy next to 1990, but the formula makes them so different. Applying 1990 after I had just been wearing Equestrian, it made me feel like I was putting on a tinted chapstick, basically some sort of lip mask instead of a lipstick. But once again, my natural lip color comes through a little bit. The sheerness of it makes it feel super natural and wearable. This is a case in which I definitely prefer the satin version of the color, or the satin brown as well. Okay, and here is Equestrian at full pigment next to L'Avenue at full pigment. L'Avenue is also, of course, one of the Satin lipsticks, and it is redder. It's more berry even than Equestrian, but in a way, they might have more in common than Equestrian has with 1990. So if you're familiar with L'Avenue and 1990, hopefully that triangulation will tell you something about the shade of Equestrian. Okay, moving on to the Merit pinks. This is the shade Classic, which the Merit website just says is neutral. So it says it's neutral. To me, it's pink, but it's like a rich, wearable pink. These colors are all quite rich, saturated. I mean, the formula is advertised as being matte as opposed to the original, but I think it's also very saturated and buildable compared to the original. Rich pinks usually aren't wearable for me, so that says something about this color. It's neutral enough of a pink for me to make it work. It's not standing out as my absolute favorite, but at least it has enough of that grunginess, enough of a mixed tone. It's mixed enough with gray that it feels like it suits me. I'm very curious to know how this looks side by side with Baby, which is one of the shades from the original formula, because it reminds me a lot of that color. Although Baby, I believe Baby has even more gray in it. Let's take a look. Oh, I forgot to show Classic blotted. Here it is, a little bit worn away. Again, blotting it has brought out a brighter tone. It's funny. I feel like this is a pinker lipstick than it looked at full pigment. So here's Baby. God, I love this lipstick. I think I had forgotten how wonderfully putty-like this color is. It definitely has more gray in it than Court. Looking at them side by side, I prefer Baby 1,000 times over Court. I appreciate that Court is a rich, wearable pink, but this is like the truly neutral color of my dreams. And next to it, Classic doesn't really look so neutral anymore. It looks peachier, frankly. So interesting. And here is Baby blotted down, still retaining that super grounded undertone. I don't want to take it off. I love it. So before we move on, here's the full pigment lip swatch of Classic next to the full pigment lip swatch of Antibes. I actually think each one of these could kind of be called a peach lipstick. Classic is kind of a version of a peach pink. It's just that Classic is one of those pinkier peaches, whereas Antibes is one of those more golden peaches. I prefer the golden peach. So between these two, it's still Antibes for me. But it does make one think how widely and sort of indiscriminately used peach is in the beauty industry. Because how can both of these be peach? And yet they kind of are. Next up, the signature lip matte in Sunday. I can already tell that this isn't going to be my thing. The website just says Sunday is pink, but I'll show it to you for science. So it isn't really my thing for me to wear, but as pinks go, it's very beautiful. And it's because of the richness and the saturation. I feel like if you're going to do a pink, going for it like this is the way to do it. It's just got that depth, the layered, rich, deep color. Like it's just got that dimension. You know, it feels like you could fall into it instead of it being a super flat cardboard version of pink. And it's actually not that it looks bad either. I don't think that it looks bad on me. I don't think it's unflattering. It's just that this isn't my favorite color for me aesthetically. There are a lot of colors that look fine, maybe are actually actively flattering on me that I just don't like to wear because I don't particularly love them. And I think there are colors that I do love for their own sake and wear even though they're not the most flattering on me. That's fine. I do what I want. And I don't particularly want to wear a pink like this. But if I did, this one would be nailing it. Let's see how it looks blotted. Just as I suspected, it would look even pinker. But it has really made itself one with my lips in the blotting, and that makes it more wearable, even as a pink. I don't really have a comp for this. I think Millennial in the original line would probably be the comp, but I gave it away because I don't like pink. Okay, moving on to the reds. Court. Merit calls this a warm brick. I call it a soft red, maybe even a soft brick, but that doesn't really make sense because bricks are hard. This is like a soft brick color. It is a red, but it is softened both in depth, like in strength, and also in color. It might not look that way on me because I am so pale, and again, because of that pale olive. Because you're looking at it in isolation and not comparing it to other red lipsticks, it just looks like a straight up red lipstick. But the softness of it makes it really wearable as such for me. And this is, I think, one of the smash hits of this line. Such a beautiful red, such a beautiful color all around. However, let's take a look at it next to Tiger from the Satin range. Tiger is my second favorite lipstick from the original line, second only to 1990. And I love it because it's a brick red. It's a beautiful wearable brick. The thing that makes it wearable is that it's like a brownish brick rather than a soft, true red, which I kind of feel like Court is by comparison. Once again, I forgot to show you the blotted version of Court. Here it is. Blotting it turns it into more of like a watermelon stain, actually. So here's Tiger, and it's funny, this also looks like a red on me, like an off red. It's just soft in a different direction. It's softened with brown. On the website, Merit calls Tiger, this satin color, a brick red, and calls Court a soft brick. But I actually feel like Court is in its way stronger, and maybe that's because Tiger is softened with brown, so it's more neutral. Compared to this, I would call Court a watermelon brick, and I would call Tiger a brown brick, and actually more of a true brick, because I think of brick as being like a brownish red. Side by side, they actually look very different, even though descriptively, like if you tried to talk about them in words, on paper, I guess you could say, on paper, they're kind of aligned, they're kind of siblings. Side by side, they're very different colors. I'm struggling to remove Tiger at this moment, even though my lips are a mess because I've swatched and removed so many lip colors over the last hour. I wish I could wear it for the rest of the day. But I guess after I finish filming, I can put it back on. Here it is blotted. So good. It's getting owie. Okay, Merit Vermillion, a warm matte red. Wow, so this is one of those brilliant, almost fluorescent feeling, super balanced reds that I think of as watery, but I don't mean that texturally. I mean it in terms of color. There's something kind of clear about the color. It's like this clear, brilliant, accessible red. It reminds me so much of Aperitif, which was a limited edition signature satin from last summer. I feel like if it's not exactly the same color, it is so close that whatever differences there are don't actually matter. Merit's calling this a warm red. To me, this is like a neutral, balanced, clear, singing, watercolory red. Wow. And blotted, it did kind of make it's holding its own. This is the one that's truest to how it looked before I blotted it, except for Equestrian. And I like that because the way that they're turning to kind of brighter, more base versions of themselves when I blot them, it's one of the things about this formula that I don't like as much. So I'm glad that this is a great lipstick. This is a great red. Let's look at it next to Aperitif. Yeah, maybe you'll be able to tell the difference side by side on the screen, but I feel like I just removed a lipstick and then applied the exact same lipstick. I feel like they look exactly the same, or more to the point, what matters, I look exactly the same. I feel like I look exactly the same as I did when I was wearing the other one. Digging into the nitty-gritty, the formula is slightly different. The pigment level actually feels similar. Aperitif feels more pigmented than some of the other satin lipsticks. It feels as pigmented to me as the matte, and the matte formula is supposed to be more pigmented. That's one of the things that distinguishes the two formulas. But this is like a super pigmented version of the satin formula. It has a tiny bit more shine. So where I've overlined the rim of my lips, the Vermillion border is catching a little bit of shine, like a little gloss, and doesn't look quite as neat as it did when I had the same technique on my lips with the matte formula. So that's a slight difference. This one might be ever so slightly more sheer, but I just don't feel like it makes all that measurable of a difference on my lips. I think the takeaway is that if you have Aperitif, maybe really think twice before buying Vermillion. If you wanted Aperitif so badly, but it was a limited edition and you missed out on it, this is your chance. You can get Vermillion and it's pretty much the same thing. I do think Vermillion looked a little bit more fluorescent, more like of a punch in the face, just a little bit, just a tick, because of that layerable matte formula. But for all intents and purposes, they're dupes. They are what we call practical dupes. In practice, it's the same thing. Okay, this is the last Merit matte, and thank goodness it is because my lips are giving out on me. This is Power. The site says it's a cool red, a deep, velvety, classic red. I don't like a cool toned red on myself as much as I like a warm toned red. I think it's beautiful. Like, it's not as though the color looks bad on me or does me a disservice. I just think that a cool toned red like this on me looks more classic, and a warm toned red looks more fashion, looks a little bit fresher on me. I think that for some people, it's the opposite. For me, this is a very classic, almost vintage look, and I always tend to default to a warm red instead when I'm going for a strong saturated red. But this is a top quality example of the specimen, as cool toned reds go. It's beautiful. It suits the formula. It's bright, strong, deep, rich. It has a kind of luminosity to it. Merit does such a good job with color. And there isn't a cool toned red in the satin line. So if cool toned red is what you tend to wear when you wear red, then this is a happy day if you're a fan of Merit and you liked their original lipsticks. So looking at the full pigment lip swatch of Power next to Court, you can see that Court is much softer. It really has that almost pale watermelon quality when you're looking at it next to something so saturated and so blue undertoned. And then Vermillion is right down the middle as a really fiery, almost cherry red. Putting Power next to Vermillion, you can see the difference between warm and cool reds. Power looks more berry. It leans more pink in a way, and Vermillion leans more orange. Of course, neither one of them is pink or orange. They're both just strong, saturated, pure red. But this one has more in common with pink than the other one. Vermillion has more in common with orange than it does with pink. None of these, however, is as orange or as dirty of a red as Cabo, which is the original red from the satin line. Okay, this is Merit Cabo. It's in the satin formula, and I'm smiling irrepressibly in the swatch footage because it's the last lipstick that I have to put on today. Or more to the point, the last one that I have have to remove. It's scrubbing them off that really does it. I love this color. I love a warm red, a really orange red, actually, like a fire red. And this is the only one that Merit makes. On the website, they call it a soft red orange. And it is softened a little bit by kind of an earthiness. You know, it's tempered by probably a drop or two of brown instead of being a fluorescent red orange. And I think that's another reason why I like it so much. It has all of these qualities that I love in a red. And actually, it's a color dupe for Lisa Eldridge Velvet Dragon, which is my all-time favorite red matte. So if you wish that there were Cabo in the Merit matte formula, then let me direct you to Lisa Eldridge Velvet Dragon, because they are exactly the same color. It's just that Velvet Dragon is a matte formula. However, I like Cabo better because I love the Merit Satin formula so much, which I'm about to launch into. But before I go there, let's look at all the reds together. So you can really see that Cabo is very orange, Power is a very blue red, and Vermillion and Aperitif, which are pretty much the same color, are those kind of luminous true reds. Strong in color, but somehow easy to wear because it's like a red with a light touch. And then Tiger and Court are the outliers. Court is softened by being a bit more of a watermelon, and Tiger is softened by being more of a brick, more of a brown. And I think Tiger is also softened by being a bit more sheer, being the prime example of what I like so much about Merit's original Satin Signature Lip formula. So let's move on to talking about formula, but I'm going to start by talking about the new one, the Signature Matte. Here's what's great about it. It's not drying. It doesn't feel like a sticky, icky, crumbly, cracky, kind of classic matte lipstick formula. It feels actually very similar to the original. The way that it goes on, the way it feels to rub your lips together, it feels slidey and nourishing and lovely. I do think it has a touch of something slick in it that I think is probably whatever ingredient makes it look matte without feeling matte. A lot of these bullet lipsticks on the market that look matte without feeling matte have a sort of slickness to them that I feel like means they stay a bit on the surface of the lips. They don't really melt in, meld with the lip skin the way that, for example, the Signature Satin does. And there are pros and cons to that. The pro is that whatever it is that that ingredient is doing means that it has a beautiful velvet matte look without feeling drying. And you know, we've been waiting. We lipstick lovers, we've been waiting for that our entire lives. And the market's just kind of starting to figure it out. I feel like Charlotte Tilbury was the first one to figure it out, but so many brands have followed suit, including Lisa Eldridge. But that slippery, sort of slidey, staying on top of the lips quality is something that I don't love in a lipstick as much as I love the nourishing feeling that the product is like sinking into my lips. And that's what the satin formula has that the matte formula doesn't have, but it's because they wanted to make it super matte. So I understand why it is. I've gone into immediately talking about one of the drawbacks, which is that slidey feeling, when I was going to start with the things that are great about it. So let me get back on track. It's not drying, and that's one of the things that's great about it. The velvety quality visually of the finish is fantastic. The one drawback for me, I think, of this formula, the satin, is that because it has that shine, it isn't as elegant for overlining. And I love to overline a little bit on the top lip and the middle of my bottom lip. So I do that anyway when I'm wearing this, but I'm aware that especially up close, you can really see it. You can see the rounded edge of my lip, and you can see that there's a little bit of lipstick kind of on my actual face instead of on my lips. The shininess of it highlights those contours and makes them really obvious and makes my overlining really obvious. With this matte formula, it's velvety. It like soaks in light instead of bouncing it off. And so it causes what is curved, which is the edge of the lip, to kind of look flat. And it gives the illusion that my lips are bigger than they are. That proper overlining illusion looks incredibly beautiful. So I think that when I want to really overline and be extremely lip forward with the shape and like bam with the color impact, that like velvety full lip color shape smack, I'll be more inclined to reach for the mattes from this line for that one reason. So that's a huge benefit to me. The richness and depth of the colors, I think, is also noteworthy. There are more darker colors in the matte formula, and that's just great for overall balance of the colors on offer. They can be built up be layered, to be super deep, super pigmented. That's one of the claims, and it definitely delivers. The matte lipstick definitely delivers on that. So it does what it says, and there's a lot to be said for it. And I think that overall, it's a really beautiful matte lipstick. However, I think you could tell this as we were going through, but I still prefer the original. I prefer something that integrates a little more completely with the lips, that wears away and blots down a little bit more naturally, whereas the matte formula, as we saw, kind of brightens in color as it wears away. I think for some people, that's probably a huge plus. I mean, it's good that the color has that lasting power, but for me, I like that really natural, elegant fade into the natural lip color, and the Satin formula offers that. I also, as it transpires, just like more of the colors in the original formula more than I like the colors in the matte formula. There are more grungy colors. Merit always does color really well, and so I'm kind of nitpicking here because so many of these colors are so beautiful, including the mattes, but it's just nothing in this matte range beats 1990 and Tiger and Cabo and Baby, actually, for me. Those 4 incredible colors from the Satin range. Antibes is really beautiful. That grungy peach, that was the first one. Court is really special. And I'm very glad that Vermillion now exists. I actually think the color that Vermillion and Aperitif both are, I actually think is slightly better suited to a matte formula. So I'm glad that they made Vermillion. I think that that's a fantastic addition to the offerings of Merit. But both in terms of color and in terms of formula, I believe that the Satins still have my heart. I like that Merit added these mattes because it's a little bit more makeup-y. With the eyeshadow release last year, the cream eyeshadow, and now with these mattes, I see Merit tiptoeing kind of more into makeup-y makeup, more into makeup that states that makeup is what it is. Makeup for the sake of makeup, you know? But they're still keeping it really edited, really classy. And so I like seeing them do that. I'm just kind of like over here, like, what's going to happen next, you know? And I think that it's been really elegantly handled, really well handled so far. But when it comes to a lip, I mean, the Satins from the Signature lip line, they were hard to beat because it's my favorite lipstick of all time. So the mattes didn't quite outstrip them, but I do think they were done well. I'm going to go now. I have done what I came here to do. I have given you everything. I had to give. My lips girded their loins, but they still weren't prepared. And my lips and I, we are going to go rest. Gosh, I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that it was helpful. I mean, how could it not have been? If you're interested, I must say that for myself. If you're interested in some of these lipsticks, how could it not have been? We did the most. So I'm sure it was helpful. I hope it was entertaining. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I thank you so much for being here. And I trust that you're remembering to take extra good care of yourself so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world. Goodness gracious, I think we got it.